All right, hello everyone. My name is Laura Villa Gomez. I'm here with the Illinois Student Assistance Commission, and we're going to continue with our Going to College series. Today, we're going to be talking about essential items to bring when you are moving into your dorm.
I'm Megan, and I also work for the Illinois Student Assistance Commission. And we'll also just be kind of giving our own experiences with dorm life and everything like that. So,
Okay. I think I can start. So for me, it was a little bit different. I actually attended the University of Michigan, which is around 4 hours from Chicago. So I did go ahead and drive and moved all my stuff via driving.
and then I went to DePaul, and I'm from the south suburbs. So it was only like a 40-minute drive to get there. So I was really close. So I wasn't too concerned about forgetting anything because I knew I could always just go home and get stuff, or I could even just take the train back. So I wasn't too concerned about it. But at the same time, being close to home does mean that sometimes you'll go home and you'll bring more stuff back. And then I remember moving out, I definitely had way too much stuff. So I guess that's another thing to kind of be mindful of.
Yeah, and even though our school choices were completely different, it definitely did not change into the similar items that we took when it came to living in the dorm. And I think we
Mhm.
can definitely go into that. So, did you want to go ahead and start, Megan?
Yeah, sure. So, the first thing I would definitely recommend is bringing like a plate and some kind of silverware, especially Tupperware. Sometimes, at least at DePaul, and I feel like most schools have a lot of on-campus events where they'll have like pizza or cookies or something like that. And I really recommend just bringing some of that back because there were definitely times when I would be really hungry, but the dining hall was closed. I was a college student, so I didn't have any money to just like order something. So I would definitely recommend doing that, just so you always have some food and you don't have to worry about it. And then also just even like plastic forks or some kind of utensil that you can use, and then also dish soap so you can obviously wash it. So that's why like paper plates and stuff might be more convenient, but it is cheap too to just get like a plate from Target or something like that. So,
Yeah, I think in addition to that, some things that I really found handy when it came to moving into the dorm was obtaining like a computer charger or making sure I brought my computer and extension cord, especially because within rooms you're not necessarily sure how many ports you may have to connect your items. And so because you are sharing a room with potentially one or more people, just depending on the layout of the room, you may need to have those extension cords so that you're able to connect your own items while keeping in mind your other roommates or suite mates. And in addition to that, I think one thing that it's important, especially within dorms, is having like your shower caddies. Make sure you're having bedding, so whatever that feels comfortable for you, whether it's a comforter, sheets. If you like to have extra sheets, that's fine too. Just don't overpack when it comes to bedding, and don't take too many pillows or too many. I know people like to take bears or something that they feel like brings a sense of home with them. Just make sure that you're keeping it to a limit because you are sharing this room for some time with individuals you may or may not know.
and to go off of that with the bedding, I remember I had some decorative pillows and I literally never used them. So I guess, I did not need to bring those. So I definitely overpacked with that. And then another thing I would recommend too is bringing like some kind of a planner. I remember I had like a notebook planner, but then in my room I also had a whiteboard, like a little tiny whiteboard. And I would just write down important stuff because I feel like I can be like forgetful. Like I would say stuff like turn this in on Friday, on Saturday, do readings for this class. So I really recommend that. Even if you get like post-it notes or sticky notes, I would do that too. And then I would put it by the door so I wouldn't forget because sometimes, you forget to look at your paper planner. So it is good to have those other reminders too.
Yeah, and I think adding on to that, one thing that a lot of people share in common is obviously you do have to pack some clothing for when you're in the dorms or when you're going to classes or just wanting to lounge around. So you do have to pack a variety of clothes. I think what I felt guilty in like kind of going falling into a hole was overpacking in terms of clothing. I took a lot of extra items that I just told myself, well, maybe I would use it. And because I was 4 hours away from where I lived, it wasn't as easily accessible to just keep going back to my home. So I think that's something that a lot of people or students fall under with overpacking clothing. And sometimes to be realistic, in my case, I didn't use half of the clothing that I took. So I think it's important to just make sure that you're prioritizing some pieces and making sure that you're not overpacking, especially clothing that, for example, you haven't worn in the past and that you think you might wear because now you're kind of new upcoming with college. The likelihood of you potentially wearing that piece of clothing, it's slim to none, unfortunately. But you can definitely take some of those pieces with the wardrobe that you're used to wearing on a day-to-day basis.
And to kind of go off of that too, dorm rooms are usually pretty tiny. I know my room was like a closet basically. So you will get a closet. I feel like most people do have closets in their dorm
Yeah.
room. So it is really good to kind of utilize that space in a way that, you can fit everything in there, and kind of just be efficient
Mhm.
about storage and things like that. So I recommend getting hangers. And also, I know they have some kind of closet organizers too that you can get on Amazon and stuff like that. Those are really helpful because you don't have a lot of space, so you do want to make the most of what you have.
Yeah, definitely. And I think speaking on the closet experience, for my first 2 years, I dormed and I actually had to share one big closet, and we just kind of split or decided where the midpoint was. And then from there, we each hung our clothing. So you do have to be mindful in that sense as well, not to overpack, because you also are being mindful of the roommate that you're sharing this specific closet with, especially because there are some pieces that you hold near and dear to your heart. So you want to make sure that it's clothing items that are important to you, but also are able to be in the open with anybody that you share your room with as you get to know them as well.
Yeah, I think that's like another really important point is the fact that you will be sharing with someone. It might be a random roommate. I had a random roommate, but luckily everything worked out really well. She was very nice and we got along, so that worked out. But you do never know, if you bring too much stuff, are you going to be kind of impeding on their space? So it is good to just be mindful of the fact that you are sharing with
Mhm.
someone else, and you don't want to be just taking up too much space so they don't have any.
Yeah, and I also want to touch note on, like, for example, Megan, she mentioned that DePaul was not as far from her house, so it was easy to kind of come and go when she did need additional items. But for example, for students that may be watching this video who are flying to their specific university or driving but a long drive with limited space within their car, it can be a pick and choose as to what you may be able to take at that moment that's important stuff for you, and things that you can potentially get at a nearby store. And that again comes with the accessibility of a car, or if you're able to kind of talk to your roommate and determine if you all can Uber to a specific store to grab some items. So like for me, for example, I went ahead and not packed hangers or anything like that because I knew that once I got onto the campus, I was able to go to my nearest Walmart and buy some of those items. So it just comes with showing like there are different items that are equally important. It just depends on the transportation that you have and the access of being able to kind of go to the store once you're on campus.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. To kind of go off of that, I do live pretty close to DePaul, so I remember I just had accumulated so much stuff over the year that I actually had to make 2 trips. So it is also good to kind of keep in mind, can I fit everything in my car when I'm trying to leave? And if you're flying, can you bring this on the plane? Like, how will you get it home? So it is also good to kind of keep that in mind, and you don't want to have too much to the point where you literally don't know what to do with it and you can't get it home.
Yeah, definitely. And especially for those individuals that may be going to universities that are kind of far away from the store, this is a good time where you can potentially even just pack school supplies that you may need for classrooms as well. Because I think for me, I was so busy on making sure that I made a list as to what I needed for my dorm that I completely forgot that I still needed school supplies for my classes. So anything like notebooks, additional pens and mechanical pencils or things like that that you may need that are useful within your dorm space, because typically if you don't go ahead and use some of the specific rooms that your university has to complete your homework or just to complete projects and anything like that, your dorm is your next best friend, and that's where you can actually go ahead and have those materials and not feel too overwhelmed and like scrambling to ask someone for school supplies that you may need.
Yeah, I think also, kind of along those lines, it's easy to get caught up in like, oh, what color bedding am I going to
Mhm.
choose? What decorations? That sometimes you forget the practical things you'll need. So, one thing that came to mind was a Brita or some kind of water filter. Some dorms, at least my dorm freshman year, did have a water bottle refill station on the first floor, but I lived on the top floor, so it wasn't convenient. So it is definitely nice to have a Brita just on hand. Otherwise, you might be stuck drinking tap water and you might not want that. So
Yeah, for sure. And I think this also comes with the conversation of what potentially large items you can get for your dorm. So, like for example, with a Brita, I personally like my water cold or anything that I have to drink. So, a mini fridge is something that typical students can bring to their dorms to not obviously like have a large fridge, but a mini fridge can definitely be useful within dorms. And I actually saw a lot of students with mini fridges when I was moving in. And I actually wasn't one to bring one, but I think it's very useful. But it also can be something that you and your roommate may both bring, and that may take up a lot of space considering the space that you're sharing within that room and how large or how small the specific room is. So maybe even if you have a good relationship with your roommate or you're able to communicate before going ahead and moving into those dorms, you can avoid any duplicate items such as that mini fridge or potentially a body mirror. I know that was very common when I was moving in, as well as microwaves. If you are okay with sharing microwaves, that's completely fine, and that can reduce the amount of items that you have within your room so it won't look as cluttered. And potentially coffee, because we're college students, so that's something that we may depend on as well. So if you or your roommate have, like for example, like a Keurig, you can go ahead and figure out who can take that and who can take which, so that it's equally fair between you both, or how many ever suite mates you may have.
And I think another thing is in today's day and age, whenever you do get your roommate assignment, it is possible to find them on social media. Sometimes schools will send you their email and you can email them and kind of communicate that way. And that's a really great way too to make sure, like, are we both bringing microwaves, or, are we going to have a mini fridge and things like that. So that is important too, is to just communicate about stuff like that, just to make sure, there's no duplicates, and also you don't want to take up too much space with having multiples.
Yeah, definitely. And there's something to be mindful about that I feel like we both share commonalities with, and a lot of universities do this as well, is that they have specific students or anybody, I believe, within their faculty of the institution that volunteers to help freshmen or anyone who's potentially moving into the dorms with caddies, and those volunteers come to you with caddies once they see your car and all of that being loaded out. Or if for example, they see you in an Uber and you request assistance, they can definitely go ahead and put your items, your suitcases or anything that you're bringing onto the dorm and help you move them in. So it's a great way to make sure that you're not feeling too overwhelmed with everything that you're taking, but it also kind of allows you to limit the items that you're taking and putting it down to the essentials so that you can also be able to take those up yourself or wherever your room is at. But again, noting that you may have support within that university as well with those volunteers.
And I think that the volunteers that do help you move in are really helpful because a lot of those things can be really, really
Yeah.
heavy. And it's really nice to have someone help you with that or even just carry it for you. So I do really recommend trying to get help. I feel like most universities do offer that service though. So, um, you can inquire about that.
Yeah, you can take
Mhm.
advantage of it if that's something that you won't have additional support with moving into your dorm. It's always a useful tool to have handy. But with that being said, I think if do you have anything else, Megan, that you would like to share before wrapping up our
Um,
series?
I do have one last note. When you do move into a dorm, it could be kind of intimidating because there's so many people that you don't know. And I feel like when you're in a dorm, you're constantly surrounded by people. You share a room, you share a bathroom, even common rooms. In my experience, there was always people in there. So I guess my advice would be that it's important to just kind of get away from that sometimes. If you need to go to the library or just go on a walk, because it can get overwhelming because it is just a brand new experience. So,
Yeah, definitely. And then on that note too, if for whatever reason you are going to like Google to make a Google search on what exactly to bring for college, if for example you're one of the first person in your family to go to college and actually live within a dorm, sometimes those lists can provide a lot of additional stuff as mentioned that you don't necessarily need. So just make sure that you're limiting it to the essentials first. And if you do have space, then from there, you can start kind of picking and choosing what you may deem as like important aside from your essentials that you would like to have in your dorm. But please just make sure that you don't overpack. And in the case that you do, then from there, just be mindful whenever you go ahead and dorm again for the upcoming school year. So just kind of keeping a list and making sure that you're asking yourself, do I actually need this or can I leave it behind?
yeah, definitely. It can be kind of difficult to know what to bring, but as you said, it is important to just start with the essentials and then kind of from there figure out, okay, what do I really need now? And then, you can always go and buy stuff. You don't have to feel limited by what you bring from home.
Yeah, definitely. All right, you all. Well, thank you for joining. If you have any questions, please feel free to use our question box and we'll go ahead and answer those whenever possible. But thank you all for joining.
Yeah, thank you.
Have a good one. And continue to join our ISAC College Going series. They bring a lot of useful information for upcoming enrolled students. So please make sure you're joining us whenever possible. Thank you. Have a good one.